Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi says his country is hurt and angry following Monday's border clash with Chinese troops in which at least 20 Indian soldiers were killed. Each side blames the other for the violence, the deadliest clash in the disputed Himalayan border region in 4 decades. The Prime Minister has warned he's given the Indian Army free rein to respond to any new aggression from China.
Saying goodbye to a father. Family members and the community attend the funeral of Satnam Singh. The Indian soldier was one of at least 20 who died in violent clashes with Chinese soldiers in the disputed Galwan Valley on Monday. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi says no territory was lost in the incident and warned of his military's capabilities. Whether it be action or counteraction, our armed forces are doing what is necessary for the security of the nation, on land, in air, and on water. The country today has such capability that no one can even dare look towards an inch of our land. The fight erupted in a region of the Himalayas where an exact border has never been defined. Both sides have accused each other of intruding into their territory, provoking the incident. China has acknowledged that its forces suffered casualties, but has not released any figures. The two sides are currently engaged in dialogue to resolve the issues on the ground through diplomatic and military channels. I have nothing to offer. Anger has now spread across India, sparking protests calling for a boycott of Chinese goods. We are calling for the Chinese president to be hanged. The Chinese army brutally killed our troops. Our movement will continue to protest and demand that consumers shun all Chinese products sold in our country. Experts say, while the two nuclear-armed neighbors are unlikely to head to war, easing tension in the region is essential.
Let's cross over to DW correspondent Nimisha Jaiswal in India and correspondent Matthias Billinger in Beijing. Nimisha, I'd like to start with you. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is warning China and people in India seem really angry. Is that the overall feeling across the country?
Well, Rebecca, there definitely is anger and resentment against the Chinese, which had been building over the last 6 weeks, given the tensions along this de facto border, the line of actual control, and the deaths of Indian soldiers has really brought matters to a head. While it is important to point out that the more extreme protest visuals we have seen are being held by fringe groups, they perhaps do represent a wider sentiment in India, especially to hit China where it hurts, which is in terms of economic ties. A trade association, for example, has called for a ban on Chinese goods. And perhaps more concerning, there are reports surfacing of India's telecom ministry and railway ministry perhaps rolling back on important trade deals with China. Analysts, however, fear that this might not be the best way forward because India and China have a trade of over $80 billion just last year. And this is something which can hurt India more than China.
Right, Matthias, I'll turn to you now. And we heard that that Modi has threatened to use whatever force necessary to sort of hit back to China. What are the reactions there in China from that warning?
The Chinese diplomats have, as always, been quite vocal in what they said. They've even asked to India to discipline its military. But here inside the country, the tone is quite low. The conflict is almost absent from the news here in China. And to me, that looks like China is really trying not to fan the nationalist sentiment that is easy to stir up here in the country in order to have more options. China's diplomats are also constantly reiterating that they are in dialogue with India and they are trying to solve this diplomatically. So at the moment, they are definitely not playing the nationalist card as they have been in other conflicts.
Nimisha, what does this mean for the future of this very long-standing border dispute?
Well, Rebecca, there are certain rules of engagement that govern this border dispute and the way the two sides conduct themselves. There have been confidence-building measures which dictate that arms not be used along the border, which is what made these deaths all the more shocking. Now, there are reports coming out that perhaps India's military can perhaps reconsider these rules of engagement. There is also a need from the Indian side to hold a really strong stance against China, what it perceives as China's aggression. Of course, China denies this and says to the Chinese side, but Indians deny this as well, and they say they will ensure that no land grabs take place by China.
Nimisha Jaiswal in Delhi and Matthias Billinger in Beijing, thank you very much.